Lion Runner at Reviews and Revisits, and we're taking a look at the Bikeriders. I finally got to see this as it's now coming to streaming on Peacock. I was about to go see it in the movie theaters, and I basically got talked out of it. The initial reviews that I saw of it were all either pretty good up to real good. Even Snarky J cosplayer reviewer mostly does genre reviews. She thought it was a great movie, as good as Goodfellas, even. And then I started looking at some more reviews and reading some things online that basically made me feel like, they basically made it sound as if this film really had no plot. And if you know anything about me, I'm huge on movies being plot driven or having well developed plots at least, and that's a major thing. I mean, the story is everything to me in a film. And with Deadpool and Wolverine had just come out, and I was like, I'm going to see that now. I won't worry about this one, and kind of moved on from it. But as soon as I saw that it was on Peacock, I was like, oh, okay, I'm checking that out, and watched it the next opportunity I had. And so we want to look at this new film and dive into it. It's really a well put together movie of a lot of interest. And so I think this is one, if you are into movies about the human experience, movies that have depth, movies that are character driven. This is very character driven, but there is a plot despite what some of the reviews that I read said. There's definitely a plot there. It really follows this biker gang and its development, and it really shows kind of the progression and the maturation of this crew over time, and it's a microcosm of the biker movement over time. And with the focus on a couple of three of the characters and how they change through the movie, you really get a nice piece, I think. So for the next approximate about 4.5 minutes, you're going to be getting my live raw reaction to watching the film. I was actually pausing the film as I was originally watching it. So about the next 4.5 minutes, that's what that is, and then I'll say when I'm outside of the my initial raw reaction when I'm stopping that piece. But yeah, I would stop. I think I first stopped the movie about 3.5 minutes, almost 4 minutes in for the first time, and just decided to start recording. Decided I would do a video on it at that moment because I had thoughts. So I was like, let me just go ahead and capture these live. So here's the next 4.5 minutes, and then we'll pick up with some more commentary on the other side of that. Snarky J said it's like Goodfellas, and I can very much see why. It's clearly filmed in the style of Goodfellas, and that's a good thing, quite frankly. The way in which Goodfellas was filmed is part of what makes the movie so great. It's almost another character in the way both that it was filmed and the way that it was cut. They're both movies about gangsters. Of course, this would be gangsters on different levels. The mafia, very organized, versus street biker gang. But they're both movies about gangsters. Um, the way that they freeze frame things, starting with the very first scene where they freeze frame on the guy getting hit behind the head with the shovel. I don't even know his name yet. I'm actually recording this as I'm watching it. So there's already a freeze frame way right there that it tells you the year 1965. Then it skips to a scene, and the next scene of these women sitting around in the laundry room talking about their gangster boyfriends and husbands is very reminiscent. It's just like the scene in Goodfellas where the women get together and they talk about beating their children with broomsticks and double stitch fabrics, and how the other women plaster on too much makeup, and how they didn't like the Jews, but they were talking to Karen, who is a Jew, and they didn't know it. They're having a scene just like this in the laundry room with these kind of lower economic class women. And then the way the music that they're using is 60s music. But again, this movie is taking place at the same time as Goodfellas. It's literally overlaps Goodfellas in time exactly. And they're both based on true stories. So these two stories were happening at the same time with these two different sets of gangsters. So we can see all that in this film. So now I'm about 22 minutes into the movie. I was around 3 minutes or so when I was started the first piece I was just going over, and I'm looking at some more stark similarities with Goodfellas. For one, the accents, right? Those were New York accents, obviously, in Goodfellas. They were Queens based, yeah, because they were like in Rockaway, far Rockaway, Queens. And here, these guys have what I believe is Chicago accents. They sounded Midwest to me in the first place, and then they started talking about some guy who started the racing club with Johnny. being having a shop out by Hyde Park. There's definitely a Hyde Park in Chicago. And then she mentioned something about him being a truck driver just in the Midwest, Johnny. So I'm pretty sure this is in Chicago. I guess I'll come back and correct this or edit this piece out if it turns out that it's not Chicago, but I'm pretty sure. And then there's this scene now here right at the 22 mark almost where there are these guys. She's talking to the reporter, and she's telling about the people who started the club originally, who were the original guys, the first 12 vandals. And as she starts to do the introduction, and then they show the actual guys, and they give their own personal introduction of who they are. Again, very reminiscent of the scene in Goodfellas where uh, what is his name walks through the club. I can't even think. The main character walks through the club, and he names who everybody is. This is Tommy two times because he says everything two times and goes through who everybody is, right? So this is a similar type of scene, right? It's not doing the exact same thing because that would be really lame to do the exact same thing, but it's it's very reminiscent of it. It effectively does the same thing. So there's that. All right, transitioning forward, I'm now about 43 minutes in. And one stark difference with Goodfellas is we don't really see the romance between Kathy and what is his name, Benny, like we do with Karen, and I still can't think of God's name. I don't know why I can't think of Ray Liotta's character's name for whatever reason. We don't see that here. In Goodfellas, there was a whole romantic sequence and them getting together and going out night after night and how they built up and even to their marriage and living with her parents and how they were together as a young couple and the whole situation where he takes her home that first day or that one day, and the neighbor guy comes over talking crap, and she calls him back. He goes back over there. He leaves the shop and goes to defend her and beats the guy down and hands her the gun. And it's kind of this toxic romantic thing of having her hide the gun with the blood on it from beating the guy as he puts it in her porcelain right hand. This is the whole thing. Here, the only time, we never see Benny and Kathy together. Just the very first night they met, and that's it. And for a couple seconds the next day, so you don't. I don't really feel their coupleness because we don't ever see it. I was thinking at some point here where they were doing flashbacks with her interviews that we were going to then come into present day and then see them together, not just her telling about everything that happened with the whole history of the club. There would be some thing with them. I just think it's a little bit weird. It does. I don't think it serves the movie the best to not have had that at some point. Hey, take a moment to like and subscribe. It would really help me out, and I would really appreciate it. It would do a lot for moving this channel along, and it's free. So if you don't mind hitting that like button, considering subscribing, I appreciate it. Getting back to the comparisons with the Goodfellas, I earlier missed the most obvious comparison, I would say, and that is the first person narration. In this film, the narration is Kathy talking to the reporter who was documenting all of this to write the book eventually that becomes this movie. It was primarily a picture album, but it was both a picture album and basically a novel or more of a, I guess, uh, historical fiction piece. And we have the same thing basically happening in Goodfellas. In that movie, Henry is talking to the audience, at least on the surface, the way we see it in the movie. And this is shown when he's in the courtroom at the end of the movie. He talks about, they did it all for the thrills. They liked being gangsters. They didn't want to wake up every day and eat spaghetti noodles or egg noodles and spaghetti sauce as marinara. They wanted to eat like real people or whatever. And he's talking to us directly in the camera. But even though he's talking to the audience directly, I think really he's talking to the author of the book who wrote the book Wise Guy that Goodfellas was based on. And basically we're getting the first person perspective of that author as Henry Hill is speaking to him about what happened. So that is another stark comparison of the two. All right. Another thing, they had this situation where they the bike riders end up burning down a club, not even a club so much. It's a bar and restaurant. And in Goodfellas, obviously, that was a major feature when they burnt out the club and restaurant that was their hangout. In this case, these guys are burning out another biker groups hang out. But again, it's still a parallel, a very close, strong parallel. A bar and a restaurant are basically the same thing. A bar is a restaurant that's heavy on the alcohol and having a bar with some food, and then a restaurant that's heavy on the food with the bar and serves alcohol. So it's definitely a parallel. Then there's this time where there's this joke played on Cal, one of the bikers in the Vandals, to where the guy is pretending like he's getting fed up. This is just like the scene with Tommy and Henry, where Tommy asks, when Henry says, "You're a really funny guy," and Tommy's like, "Funny? How? Funny how? How do you mean I'm funny? You mean the way I talk? What's so funny about me?" you know, you know the whole spiel. So again, another similar reminiscent interaction, but this can be understood as probably a fairly common interaction with guys of this nature who bust each other's balls, who live on the edge, and they kind of fake each other out about going over that edge. So again, with these movies both being movies about gangsters in the same time period, even it is not too weird that it has these type of parallels. I guess in the last act, I finally buy and feel the coupleness of our central couple in this movie, Kathy and Benny. They are finally together more, and we get to see some of their more emotional interactions. When Benny almost gets his foot chopped off, if you haven't seen the movie, but I'm not telling you when it's happening. Um, when they're going back and forth about who's going to leave and who's going to stay, you get more of them, and then you can buy it more. It comes together. I still would have had more of them together before the movie gets rolling. I think it would have been stronger, but it comes together fairly nicely. So then there is the Vandals putting up with the young guys shooting Johnny Makes. Oh, okay, sorry. I'm looking at a note that I wrote when I was watching the movie, even though I'm now doing this part of the review about 2 or 3 days after. I should have said that when I came back from the part where I asked you guys to like and subscribe. Coming back in about the obvious comparison of the narration. This is me about 2 or 3 days later, going through some notes that I wrote while watching the movie. And there was the end of the movie. So this is definitely going to be a major spoiler. So if you still wanted to see it, you don't feel like it's too spoiled yet, you can go ahead and skip ahead, or maybe this is the end of the road for you. Like and subscribe, and you might want to bail out. All right, here it goes. When that young guy who challenged Johnny for the top spot just walks up to him and shooting him. First of all, the fact that they would be going for a fight, all of the other side's guys would be out there, but the Vandals are all sitting in their cars like little sissies. This doesn't make any. I just don't buy that. Even if they're old guys now and they're kind of they didn't want to be out in the cold. How in the world do you let your not just your Ace Boone Coon, not just your guy, but your leader go into a battle by himself with a bunch of other guys standing around him, and you're going to be 20, 30 feet away in your car? What also makes no sense is that they let the guy shoot him, and then that was it. There's no get back. There's no response. They're scared of this guy. Everybody's got a gun. I'm not a gangster in the least bit. I got a gun and I'll bust it. And you're not. You're no more bulletproof than I am. Who's this kid that somebody's scared to take their gun and blast him out, blast him away? I don't even think. I wonder if that really happened. I should have looked it up. Uh, it's just hard to believe if it did happen, or if they say in the book that it happened like that, from Kathy giving her story to the reporter. Kathy wasn't there, and I'm gonna guarantee you, even if she gave the story like that, that's not how it happened. Don't believe it for 1 second. Just makes no sense. He had to come up on him in some other way and get the drop on him. And the young guys would have had to already have muscle and hegemony within the gang hierarchy, to where the older guys were just like, I'm about done. I just want to ride my bike and ride off into the sunset. And there's more of them now than there is us. And they just did it in this real cogent manner for the movie. But I think that's lazy. And I don't like that part. I don't believe it at all. And that's one of the probably worst parts of the movie. Maybe the worst part of the movie. So I like seeing the photos at the end of the movie. I meant to look up whether those photos were all real or not, but I think the very first one was from the movie, and I believe most of the rest of them were the actual photos. And I guess I'm interested in going to take a look and finding that book and seeing if those photos are online and to what degree. But again, this movie, that's kind of the end of my notes. This was a really good film. I definitely enjoyed it. It definitely is Goodfellas, but it's Goodfellas light. It is in the spirit and the frame of Goodfellas. It has, again, as we showed, many of the aspects, and they are done very well. I love the gritty, kind of grainy way the film is shot, grainy but still crisp, if you understand what I mean, like a kind of a grain overlay. Feels real to the time and the places. I enjoy the performances of all the actors. The lady who plays Kathy, who I understand has a British accent, and she mastered this form of a Midwest accent. It's not a necessarily a down the middle Midwest accent. It was pretty extra heavy and exaggerated a bit, maybe, but it was still where it needed to be. It was good job. The self confidence and just the James Dean Award, or I meant to say, of the guy who's playing Benny. I think that guy's going to be moving up in the world. Tom Ford did a really great job. They're like hushed tones with which he spoke very deliberately as a Johnny, kind of almost barely squeezing out words, like he's pushing words out as air from his lungs, and he could barely be bothered to speak. It kind of reminds me of when they were talking about Paul Cicero moves very slow, but Paul Cicero didn't have to move for anybody in Goodfellas when he was taking his time to go to the phone or just in general. And he kind of spoke in the hushed tones. And the Godfather, Francis Ford, not Francis Ford Coppola, that's the director and writer, but the guy who plays Godfather, whose name is escaping me at the moment, same kind of hushed tone persona and that kind of detached, strong, quiet type, as Tony Soprano might say. These Tom Ford really represents that in this character of Johnny. He does an excellent job. You get a real sense of who the guy is between. He's really out there just to have fun, drink beers, be with his guys. He's not really into violence and a bunch of foolishness, but he's down with it if that's what comes. And he's really more or less trying to stay away from it most of the time. Of course, how they burned out that guy's bar was dead wrong. The bar owner didn't do anything. If you're going to go after the guys who hurt your friend, go after the guys who hurt your friend just because it happened at this guy's bar and these guys frequent the bar. There was no cause for that because this is just another common guy like you out here trying to make it, and you're going to burn down his business. But other than that, up until then, I really liked Johnny. And he seemed like somebody you can root for and get behind. So it is kind of tragic when he gets shot, even though I didn't, I gained some distaste for him when he burned down the guy's bar. I thought Benny was a weird guy. He basically had no point. Life just had no point. And maybe you'll say to me, well, that's the point. This is an aimless guy, whatever, rebel without a cause, just like James Dean. That's who he's modeled after. Marlon Brando. It's also was in the movie. Johnny watches a Marlon Brando film. I forget the name of the movie, but when he's in a biker gang, Johnny's watching that movie, and that kind of inspires him to start his biker gang. And you guys know the classic movie where Marlon Brando was wearing the leather jacket and like the Porter hat for the bikers wore in probably the 40s, maybe the 50s even. And this movie's in the 60s, right? So maybe going into the early 70s. And then, well, at the end, it's way probably in the 80s even. But again, like Goodfellas. But that's at the very end when it gets into the 80s, only the last few minutes. Maybe it's still probably late 70s now that I'm thinking about it on timeline. But anyway, uh, yeah, he was intentionally modeling himself after Marlon Brando within the film. And clearly the actor, and probably the writer and director all made choices about this guy being like Brando, being a Brando-esque guy on the street. I think that was the intention, Godfather-like. So wrapping this up, first of all, I decided I'm under the weather right now. I have a respiratory thing going on today. That's why my voice is maybe kind of different towards the end here. But I went and looked some stuff up instead of guessing. And the book is completely nonfiction. While, of course, the movie is a fictionalized version of the book where the outlaws are changed to the vandals. But all of the three characters and most of the rest of the characters are based on very real people. And I also looked up those photos at the end of the movie. I know the first one, I was correct that that was a recreation of Benny hovering over the pool table. I think maybe most of the rest of those were real. Is what it seems like, but I don't have 100% confirmation. All right. Um, so again, I say Bikers is like it's in the vein of Goodfellas, but it's Goodfellas light. It's very good, but it's not nearly as great as Goodfellas. It had so many other things to it. The plot was more in depth and integral. The uh, the arcs, while there were arcs in these movies, they were more subtle. Like Benny is a straight line till again spoiler. Benny is a straight line till the end of the movie, and Kathy really doesn't change much. She kind of goes back and forth. I think Tom Hardy takes the biggest change. Johnny, Kathy maybe changes some. She changes in just being willing to go along with Benny and wants to finally settle down and have a substantial relationship and all those sorts of things. Doesn't show that they had kids or anything in the movie. At least I could look it up, but I'm not. It's not that. It doesn't matter. And again, in Goodfellas, also the use of the '60s music. There were a couple of spots where they did similar music, but it was only once or twice, and it was not a major feature of this movie. In Goodfellas, that is a character in the movie, the music, and the fact that Scorsese used music that had nothing to do with the subject matter. The part where Samuel L. Jackson, I think his name was, I forgot right now, the trucker, when he's getting killed by Tommy and that music is playing. That song is a Christmas love song about the church bells, the bells of Saint. It's called the Bells of Saint Mary. You should look it up. The original by is it the Drifters? It's an amazing. The guy who does that vocal run at the oh man, amazing vocal runs in that song, amazing. In the original one by I think the Drifters, the black group who originally sung it. Some other group sings it, but they're not very soulful. We'll leave it at that. The fact that these songs a lot of times were irrelevant to what the situation was, but still perfectly set a mood. I mean, that song is so embedded in my person, and I only have ever heard of it in that movie. Only time I've ever heard Bells of St. Mary is in Goodfellas, or if I went and looked for it. I've never heard it play. I would have never heard that song in my life if not for Goodfellas. And now it's a very embedded thing with that run and how the music crescendos as Tommy's gun is recoiling. Man, it's just perfection in those ways. And so, again, this is definitely a movie you want to see. Check it out on Peacock, or if it's still, excuse me, if it's still in your local theater, I would even encourage you to go give the theater some money. Let's keep our theaters open. Let's keep the movie going experience a thing in America, and let's give our money to movies that matter or that do something, so that we get more of the stuff that is worth it. I might go look for it and go see it in the theaters, even though I just saw it at home just cause. I'll think about it. So I just want to say Lion Runner with reviews and revisits. I'm reviews and revisits both on YouTube and Instagram. On Instagram, it's reviews underscore and underscore revisits where I do written reviews and do some video reviews, short video reviews of trailers and things of that nature. Check me out there, and then make sure you're subscribed here to get my long form reviews, and my video essays such as this. Lion Runner, like, subscribe, notification bell for show, and we're out of here on this one. Thanks.